prepped our piece and got ready for threading. Threading can be a relatively complicated procedure here. There's a lot to do with setup. And I'm just going to go through it one at a time here, and you can use this kind of as a checklist. Step number one, when we thread, we're going to use a power feed function again. It's not going to be the same one we use for knurling, okay? But we're going to use the power feed function to feed left and right. Our depth of cut is going to be controlled by our compound. Okay, so the compound, much like we did with tapering, we're going to have to change the angle of this. And for threading, the angle we are shooting for here is 30 degrees. So right now we're set at about 45. Right, I'm going to swing this so that it is 30 degrees, right, from off of center here. So it actually on our dial is going to say 60, okay, because we want the included angle here to be 30. Okay, so set our compound to 60. Okay, lock it back down, go the right way. So we've got our compound set. Now our cutting tool is this guy right here. Okay, it is set. It's got the correct angle built into the cutter itself. Okay, that's a 60-degree included angle, which is typical for a UNC thread. We're going to load this up. We want to be height-wise on center, and we want to have the tool, much like we did with knurling, perfectly square with our workpiece. So I'm going to use the same trick as I did with the knurling tool. I'm going to loosen this up and use the workpiece itself to kind of help me get square. Again, not exactly super accurate, but for what we're doing right now, should be more than accurate enough. Okay, that looks pretty good. Tighten it up. All right. So that's the setup on our tool. Right? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set our compound to 0, just like we did with tapering. And we are going to touch off on the outside diameter of the workpiece and 0 the top DRO number here. I'm going to turn this down to 260 again. And we just want to come in until we see a touch. Right there. Okay, so that 0 number now is going to be very, very important later on. So we've zeroed the compound, zeroed our axis, and now it is time to go ahead and set up our power feed. Now, power feed before we set at a feed rate based on thousandths of an inch per revolution. For threading, it's going to be a little bit different. We want to set the threading to the thread call out. Okay? And we said earlier it's a half 20, which means we want 20 threads per inch. So before our feed rate was down here. Okay? Up here is our threading chart. So I'm going to find 20. There's 20, and it says my gearbox combination is C3SY. So I'm going to set my gearbox to C. I'm going to try to set my gearbox to C. C, S, Y, and 3. And we're going to do this at a low speed, okay? Because you're going to see, I'll show you this here. When you thread, it moves. It can move depending on the thread count or the teeth per inch or threads per inch. It can move very quickly on you when we're using the threading. So I've got it set to 20 threads per inch. I've got my feed going to the left, which is what we want, and I've turned my RPM down to 260. Now you're going to notice something. here when I turn this on. Okay? This right here is what's called a thread dial. And that is going to help me keep track of when I am engaging the half nut of the lathe to go ahead and engage the power feed. When we thread, because we can't do it like knurling, we did it all at once, we can't do that with threading. We have to take several passes to get to a specific depth. So I need to make sure that after I'm done with one pass, I can return to the same spot and start my thread cutting in exactly the same location as I did previously. If I don't, then my thread cutting is going to overlap and I'm just going to turn away all my material. I want to hit that same track and same groove every single time. So when I turn this on, you're going to watch the thread dial rotate. Okay? So that's moving round and round. To thread, I'm going to engage the half nut lever. Now when I thread, whatever number I start on is the number I'm going to start on throughout. So I lift, now my threading, I'm threading. When I'm done, we go down. Right? This speed is based on how fast the machine is rotating. So that was 260. If you can picture how fast that was rotating, I'm going to turn this up to 1200 and watch how fast this thread dial rotates now. If I engage it, that thing starts cranking. Okay, so we have to slow this down so we have enough reaction time to stop our thread cutting before it bashes into our workpiece, or worse, comes into the headstock. So threading speed, nice and low, lots of reaction time. Okay? Now, we have set the compound to 30 degrees. We've set our tool height centered on the workpiece and perpendicular. We have set our gearbox to 20 threads per inch. We are feeding to the left, okay? And I've set our RPM to 260. In order to keep track of when we are done cutting threads, we are going to use a Sharpie, and I'm going to just color the outside of this, and I know once all the black or Sharpie is gone, okay, I'm pretty close to being done with my threads, and I can start testing against the steel piece that I made, or I've got some half 20 nuts that we can check with. Okay, but I'm just going to go ahead and color this with the Sharpie. I've ruined the Sharpie already. So that little bit will help me keep track of how much I have cut. I'm going to grab another one, see if I can get that coming a little bit better. A little bit. Okay. And now that's going to, as I cut, that Sharpie mark will go away, and it will help me gauge where I am with my threading. So, we're about ready to cut. Okay. The way this is going to work is I am going to go to my 0 point on my DRO every single time I'm ready to start a new pass. So go to 0, I'll use the compound to cut, or set my depth to cut. I will use the half nut to cut my threads. Okay, after I cut my threads, okay, I'm going to stop, back out, go back to the beginning. Go back to 0, dial in a little bit more. And I'm going to continue to do that until my Sharpie is gone. Now again, we want our work supported, so I'm going to bring the tailstock back in here. Alright. And get ready to go ahead and cut. Make sure you're going to clear everything. Okay, so I'm at 0. Okay, I'm going to dial in, let's go 5 thousandths. Okay, threading is going to take a little while. We'll start with 5 to make sure we're cutting at the correct feed. Okay, and we're going to, at this point, pick a number that we're going to use to go ahead and, we'll pick a number on our thread dial that we're going to use consistently as we cut these threads. So we'll get going here in just a second. All right, everybody, we're ready to go ahead and cut. Just to recap for our setup, we've turned the compound, so we're at 30 degrees this way, which means our reading actually reads 60 on the dial here. We've set our tool perpendicular to our workpiece and height-wise right on our axis. We've added the live center to help prevent deflection. We've set our gearbox to 20 threads per inch. We've set our feed to go to the left. We've turned our RPM down to 260. And we have colored the outside of our workpiece to help us gauge when we are at a depth where we can start checking our cut or our threads. So again, compound's at 0 on the dial. We've zeroed our DRO on the outside diameter of our workpiece. So to start, I'm going to go ahead and dial in about 5, 6, 7 thousandths depth of cut on my compound. I'm going to turn the machine on, and I'm going to use the thread dial down here, okay, and the half nut lever to go ahead and gauge the actual cutting operation. So I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to pick a number. Okay, when it gets down to the indicator line down here on the bottom, I will engage the half nut and begin cutting. When I get into the thread gutter that we've turned, I'll disengage the lever, okay, and come back to our starting position. So we'll start with 1. Engage, disengage, back out, come back to the beginning, go back to our 0, and increase our depth of cut on the compound. Wait for 1 to come back around. I can see a little scratch pattern on here, but we'll be able to see one a little bit better on this next pass. Okay, but we'll wait for 1. Here it comes. Lift on the half nut lever. Off in the thread gutter. So out, back to the beginning, back to 0. And at this point, I'm going to take a look. I'm going to shut everything off and take a look at my scratch pattern, and I can see that it's very even. And if I wanted to, I could get a thread pitch gauge out of the toolbox here and double check to see that I'm at 20 threads per inch. Okay, these are handy little tools. These are thread pitch gauges, and they have got teeth cut into them that match the pitch of different threads. Okay, so this is a 20. If I take this and put it on top of my workpiece, I can see that those teeth fit really nicely into that tiny little groove that I cut. So I know that I'm set up right to cut 20 threads per inch. At this point, I feel confident. I'm going to go ahead and proceed. At the beginning, we can take 7, 8 thousandths at a cut. As we get deeper on our cut, we can't take as much. So we're going to start backing off. I might do 2 cuts at 8 thousandths, then maybe 2 cuts at 6 thousandths, and then slowly back off. My final few passes are only going to be at 1, 2, 3 thousandths of an inch depth of cut. So we're go back to 0 here. Dial in a little bit more. Wait for number 1 to come around. And we're going to continue to cut in that fashion. So I'm going to continue to repeat this process until almost all of the black Sharpie is gone. Okay, and then we're going to start checking our fit. So off, out, over, back to 0. And then we're going to dial in some more. There's 8. Wait for 1. Oh, we just missed 1, so we're going to have to wait a second here. And I'm going to repeat this, so I'm going to shut up, let this roll, and we'll chit-chat here when we get closer to being done. Okay, we're getting close here. So this pass, I think I'm gonna do like 2 or 3 thousandths, and then I'm gonna start checking to make sure we don't go too far. And we'll check with the nut or the workpiece. 2. All right, so get this out of the way. Grab the nut to test with. We'll try and thread this on. Ooh, that is so close. It goes on real easy and then it gets very tight, which means that our threads are not quite deep enough. Okay, so again, we're going to repeat. I think this time I'm going to take 2 thousandths off again. And at this point, I'm only taking 1 pass. I'm going to check every single pass until I have that just right. So we'll come back here, go back to 0. 2 thousandths, 1, 2. And sit here and wait for number 1 to come back around. You can see how big of a chip that is, even only taking a 2 thousandths of an inch. Okay, that becomes quite a big chip. So let's see here. There it is. That's right on. Okay, run this nut on and off a couple times and we should be 100% good. So that, ladies and gentlemen, how you apply threads using a single point method. Thanks for watching.